Okay, so once again, thank you all for coming to this presentation. My name is Cody Sibley. I am the program analyst who manages the Home Tenant-Based Rental Assistance Program and also the Emergency Solutions Grant Program. Today we'll be talking about the Home Tenant-Based Rental Assistance Program as it pertains to certain updates that are coming from HUD, some updates that are coming from OHCS to kind of align with HUD standards. Um, and then we'll also talk a little bit about Inspire as well, because I know that deadline's coming up this year. So, topics to discuss. We're going to start this presentation with a little bit of points of clarification. There's just been two main things that have come to my attention that I just wanted to just let everyone know, like, what the practice is and things like that. And then after that, we're going to go over some HUD rule amendments. I will be entirely honest. These rule amendments were supposed to be implemented, or they were supposed to go live in February. HUD has since delayed them until April 20th. I debated on whether I wanted to wait until after the 20th to give this presentation. I decided to just go ahead and do it now. And then if there are any changes to the amendments after the fact, then I will let you all know, but I don't anticipate there will be. Then we're going to go over some OHCS updates for next program year. Most of it is around, just aligning with the HUD rule amendments. There are also some other tweaks that we've made too, just in kind of like, looking at the program, figuring out, what works, what doesn't work, and adjusting accordingly. And then we'll be talking about the transition to Inspire. If at any point you have any questions, feel free to just come off mute and interrupt me. I think that's the easiest way. You can also put questions in the chat if you want as well. We'll have, Colleen and we'll be monitoring for those questions. So whatever you're more comfortable with. Also, if you want to save it to the end, that's fine too. Okay, so some quick points of clarification. So, just for the households served. So there are some community action agencies across the state. So first of all, we give out TBA dollars to community action agencies based on populations that do not live in communities that receive those funds directly from HUD. So what that means is there are some community action agencies that have cities within them that get home money directly. So whenever we like do our allocation tables, we, base it on like poverty levels, number of people experiencing homelessness, et cetera, things like that. When we give you those dollars, we're not looking at like the cities that get home funding directly. The reason is that we're trying to spread the money out, make sure we're being equitable to regions that are maybe not as served. So that's why we're doing it. That said, you are able to use those dollars to serve all eligible households within your community. So if someone comes to you and they live within a city that gets home funding directly, but they're coming to your community action agency, there's no restriction from OHCS on whether you can serve them or not. If they're eligible and if you have the funding and if they meet, your preference list criteria, things like that, you can go ahead and fund them with TBA. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of make that clear for everyone. Also, length of assistance. There is no specific time limit for how long someone can receive TBA assistance. So households can stay on the program as long as they remain eligible and as long as you have funding available. Again, if you have specific policies, practices, etc., that's and there's not as much funding availability, that's a different story. But in terms of like how long someone can stay on the program, it's not like ESG where there's like a 2-year time limit. It's based on funding availability. Okay. So now that that's over, we're going to go over some HUD rule changes. We're hoping that these rule changes will actually make administering the program a little bit easier for y'all. If there are any questions on, you know, what some of this stuff means, again, please feel free to come off mute and just ask me. So this is a lot of text. um, So this is a rule change as it relates to income verification documents. So as you know, the current home program requires, I believe it's source documents. I think it might be two source documents for about 2 months worth of like wage statements, public benefits that they're receiving, any sort of pension, right? Like that's what we typically require. However, um, HUD is now allowing us to accept, instead of source documentation, you can accept income determinations made from other forms. So if someone comes to you and let's say receiving Medicaid or temporary assistance for needy families, or I'm gonna mess up the acronym, but it's like the LIE tax credit, any form of public assistance, yeah, you can accept that as long as it meets certain requirements. So basically you still have to be able to obtain the household size and income. The reason being is that we still have to adjust the income to figure out what the subsidy is, but if you can obtain those two things, then you can accept the income determinations from another form of public assistance. To get that information, you can just get that from, any federal or non-federal entity that is administering the assistance. They would just need to send you basically a statement that says, this person makes, we determined that this person's annual income is this much money and they have this much people in their household. Once you get those documents, you just need to make sure you place it in the client's folder, just like you would with any other information you'd get from them. So yeah, that is, one requirement. The next one is that the income determination needs to have been made within the previous 12-month period. Participants then have 6 months to obtain housing. If they don't obtain housing, then you would have to do another income determination after that. And then OHCS would still need you to put the information on the app 3 so that we can adjust the income according to the number of dependents, the disability allowances, and things like that. Another change is the frequency of income verification. So this is a little wonky, but the income verification used to be good for a year, right? It was good for 1 year, then you had to verify basically each year, and I think you could do it maybe like 6 months ahead of time or something like that. Now income verification is good for the length of the contract. And the length of the contract can now be amended to extend for up to 2 years. So what that means is if a participant moves into a house for a year and they renew their lease for a year, you can amend the contract to extend the contract for an extra year without requiring another income verification. HUD explicitly did this to allow households to basically get back on their feet and have a little bit of wealth building without fear of losing their housing. So, income determinations can generally be valid for up to 24 months if the contract is amended. There's some wonkiness and caveats. So let's say the tenant after 1 year decides to move to an entirely new housing situation. Then in that case, yeah, or they renew the contract with the current landlord after the 24-month period, then we would have to do an income determination. But if they're staying in the same housing and you're just amending it to extend from 12 months to 24 months, or, maybe 6 months to 18 months, or, whatever the case may be, if they're just staying in the same housing and you're amending the contract to extend how long they can stay in that housing, then then you do not need to do an income determination. So I wanted to go over contract amendments for a second because this is something that's kind of new. My understanding is that previously, after someone signs a contract, they can either be renewed for an additional year or so, or they enter into a brand new contract. HUD is now introducing contract amendments specifically to allow for the delayed income determinations. So contracts can be amended for the following reasons. They can be amended because the lease between the household and the owner has been amended or renewed. Um, if the lease term or amount changed under the lease are the only two terms of the contract that are being changed. So if they're staying in the same housing, but you want to extend the lease term, you can amend the contract. Or if the amount charged, maybe there was like a rental increase or something like that, then you can amend the contract to just update the subsidy amount, and it's not going to require another income determination. You can extend the term of the contract up to 24 months from the original date of execution. Another situation where you can amend it without requiring like a whole new lease is if the tenant is staying in the same building, but they're moving units. So let's say their household size says they're able to have a 2-bedroom, but they're in a 1-bedroom or something like that. And a 2-bedroom pops up, they can move to that and amend the contract without requiring a new income determination. Yeah, so they're able to do that. Provided that the family size and number of, never mind, that example was wrong. I apologize. So if the tenant changes units within the same building or development, as long as the parties to the lease, the family size, and the number of bedrooms in the housing remain the same. So if they're just changing units and it's from a 2-bedroom to another 2-bedroom, then you can do an amendment without doing income redeterminations. So those were the HUD updates. Before I get into the OHCS updates, are there any questions, any points of clarification that you'd like? Anything? Okay, I'll take that silence as a no and keep going. So now we're going to go into some OHCS updates. So even though the contracts can go up to 24 months at a time, we're going to keep app 3s to cover just 12 months at a time. The reason being is that the lease still can't be bigger than 12 months. You can just amend the contract and then basically start a new lease. That and the federal system doesn't allow us to extend it beyond 12 months at this time. If that changes in the future, then we can reassess. But right now, the app 3s are still going to cover 12 months. We have a new minimum tenant contribution. It will now be $0. The reason for that is just again, going with the HUD guidance of allowing households to do some wealth building without fear of losing their housing. That's kind of why we picked $0. They'll still have to pay like 30% of their adjusted income toward housing. But yeah, like if they have absolutely no income or extremely low income, then they might have $0 for their contribution. We're also going to be, grants will now span the entire biennium. So we're not going to have mid-biennium rolling. So starting July 1st, you'll still need to roll them into the 25-27 biennium, but when you go into OPUS, you'll see the expenditure period is going to be 7/1/25 to 6/30/27. We're doing that to basically just reduce the amount of rolling that you'll have to do, reduce that administrative burden when we can. Inspection reimbursements, we're going to get rid of the $50 cap. So yeah, there's no more reimbursement cap or limits. If the inspection costs $60, $70, then we will reimburse you for that amount. We made some small changes to the App 3 to reflect these changes. And there is... Okay, I'm going to need to update this slide. So the last bullet point is something that we are not able to do at this time. We thought we could, but we worked it out and it's not something we're able to do. But the App 3 proposal, so we're proposing separating out the amount of subsidy going to rent versus utilities. That is if y'all want it, then we can do it. We do not have to. I will pull up an App 3 and show y'all what it looks like. I do want feedback, and we'll also provide the App 3 for y'all for a 30-day period to kind of give us comment and feedback on whether this works or not. We've gotten some ask before to separate it out, so I just wanted to at least present that idea to the network to see if that's something that everyone wants to do. If it is, we can move forward with it. If not, then we'll kind of revert back to what we've been doing this last year, where we don't separate it out on the App 3. And we've also extended the RFF workbooks to cover the entire biennium. So yeah, when you get next year's RFF workbooks, it'll be from July 2025 through June 2027.
Cody, we
Yeah.
have some questions in the chat.
Oh, okay.
We have one from Haley Stanbow. So if there's a new owner or property manager for the tenant's unit, we would use an amendment, correct?
So if there's a new owner, let's see. So the parties to the lease need to remain the same. However, I'm not sure if when it comes to like, yeah, if it just I'll need to look into that to make sure that that stays the same. I would imagine it would all be the same. But I will check on that for you. Okay. So new owner, would it require an amendment or not? Are there any other questions?
No, but a lot of excitement from the last PowerPoint you had up.
Okay, good.
Last screen. A lot of excitement. Yes, please. Yes. Yes, please. So that's a good sign.
Yeah, glad to hear it.
That's it for now.
Okay. Okay. So before I go on to Inspire updates, I wanted to go ahead and just show y'all what the proposed App 3 is going to look like. And just try to get some feedback. So let me stop sharing for a moment. And okay. All right. Let me go ahead and share. Okay. So here's a draft of the App 3. Part 1, and sorry, I'm just gonna, yeah, I'll hope that's big enough for everyone. If it's not, feel free to come off mute. So I highlighted the changes that we made in green so that you could see them. So part 1 doesn't really change a whole lot. We just added like app 3 version effective as of, and then we put July 1st, 2025. I did that because when I made this app 3 last year, there was a bunch of different versions we created to fix some, to tinker with it and make some changes. So this will just make it clear so y'all know which one is the most current one. Okay, part 2, we have not changed at all. Part 3, we've not changed at all. Part 4. And I can put in some real numbers for y'all just so you have it. We'll just put someone whose annual wages is 0. Put a household size at 4 people, 0 to 30%. 2, 0, 0, 0, 0. What is the monthly rent? I'm just going to make up some numbers. Let's say it's $1,400 with a $140 utility schedule. Let's pretend the fair market rent is $1,650. And then if we say that there's 10 months of assistance. So what we did for part 4, we kept the total monthly subsidy here, and then these two, 35C and 35D, we just break it out a little bit more so that we see like the monthly subsidy that goes to the contract rent and then the monthly subsidy that goes to utilities. So what we did was we put most of the subsidy as going to the contract rent. So yeah. So it's the lesser of the total monthly subsidy or the monthly contract rent. So that's what we did there. It takes the lesser of those two numbers, and that is what goes to contract rent, and then any leftover goes to utilities. I read over the Housing Choice Voucher Program regulations, and it looked like that is kind of how they do it for that program. And we try to mirror the TBA program as much as we can to match the Housing Choice Voucher Program. So that's why we did it that way. And then the tenant contribution is 0. So then the tenant contribution is 0 and 0. And then enter the amount of prorated rent the agency. I don't know, we can do 0 there. We'll just say 2,000 there, 0 there. So that's what it looks like. And then if you want to see what it looks like with a tenant that actually maybe has a contribution, because this one would have 0, then, we can increase the wages to, I don't know, 12,000. They'd have a $276 contribution because that's 30% of their income. Yeah. And so what we did was, again, the subsidy to the contract rent is the lower of the total monthly subsidy or the monthly contract rent. In this case, the total monthly subsidy is lower than the contract rent. So that's it, all goes to the contract rent. Nothing goes to utilities. And then the tenant contribution is to basically make up the difference for the contract rent, and then they're responsible for the rest of utilities. So that's what that looks like. And then if we decrease the fair market rent to 1,000, then what happens here is that the subsidy decreases to be, the rent standard minus 30%. Again, all of it's still going to the contract rent because there's not basically the leftovers go to utilities now. So yeah. And then the tenant contribution, it becomes 30% of their income plus the rent overage. And then this kind of separates it out. So yeah, that's it. Any thoughts, questions, yays, nays, anything like that? Okay, I'm getting applause from Autumn. Very, very helpful from Rebecca. Okay, cool. Okay, I'm not seeing any objections, so sorry I got rid of that last year, guys. What I will, okay, so then what we'll do, again, I will give this all to y'all to, you know, play with, mess with the numbers, make sure that it, you know, make sure it works for y'all's different scenarios. Um, a question that I have for y'all is, how soon do y'all need a final version? Okay, yeah, so Rebecca, that's kind of where I'm trying to get at is, how soon do y'all need a final version to where people who's like start getting on the program July 1st will be able to use this version, if that makes sense. So if someone June 1st for Dina, June 1st. Okay, great. Okay. So then we'll okay. So then that sounds good to me. My plan is to give this to y'all for a 30-day comment period. And then after that, we'll post a final version. Um, yeah, and it'll be available for tenants who will have contracts and agreements executed to be in effect for July 1st. So yeah, so we won't be able to use it for this program year, um, just because, our minimum contribution is still $10 and there's still some other adjustments or whatever. But starting for people that will be on the program for July 1st, y'all can start using this one. Okay. So that was the big one there. I can show y'all the RFF workbook if you want. There really isn't that much change other than it's going to span a 24-month period rather than a 12-month period. So, and I think what I'll do is I'll just still send that version to y'all so y'all can look at it as well. And again, we expanded it just to reduce a little bit of administrative burden. So, yeah. Okay, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint and we're going to talk about Inspire. So Inspire has an effective date of October 1st, 2025. Um, there is a piece of the home regulations that has been kind of a hiccup for us, and that's why we've kind of been delaying things and there hasn't been much communication yet. But I got some clarity from DOJ on what we need to do moving forward. Um, so OHCS is required to establish property standards that require housing to meet all applicable state and local code requirements and ordinances. That was kind of the sticking point for us. We had to work with DOJ to figure out if the state of Oregon actually had any sort of ongoing property standards. I just wasn't aware of any, and I wanted to make sure that that was the case. And we've gotten confirmation from DOJ and the state agency that's in charge of like building codes that the state of Oregon does not have any sort of like ongoing inspection requirements. So because of that, we default to the Inspire standards. However, while that satisfies the state part, there's still this like local code requirement that we're not entirely sure of. I think it'll be rare if any local jurisdiction within Oregon requires any sort of ongoing inspections for housing. Um, but just to be absolutely certain, we created this self-certification form for y'all to fill out. It's not, I don't think it's overly burdensome. And again, I think if you do have properties, if you do live in a county or a city that has ongoing property standards or ongoing inspection requirements, I, that's extremely rare. And if it does happen, reach out to me and we can figure something out together. Um, and we can kind of go over what would happen in that case. But yeah. So I will go ahead and show y'all what the self-certification form looks like. And again, I know that where are y'all? Okay. And again, I know that that's kind of a big change, but it should be rare. And again, as long as it is, then that means that all you would have to do is just adopt Inspire. Um, yeah. So, so here it is. Here's the form. I'll zoom in so that you can read it. And again, I'll send this form for y'all again for a 30-day comment period just to make sure that it works with what y'all need, make sure it's not confusing, anything like that. It's 2 pages in total. So all you do is fill out the name of your community action agency, whoever's the authorized representative. So whoever's filling out the form, you can fill it out right. You just fill out your name right here, along with your title, which is just, whatever your job title is, and then whatever date it is. So part 1, local government with property standards. Complete part 1 of this document if any body of local government within your service area, so county, city, I don't really know if there's any other local governments besides counties and cities in Oregon, but I just kind of like added this part to cover our bases. Um, I mean, there's Oregon Metro, but they don't get TBA funding from us. So complete this document if any body of local government has adopted property standards that require ongoing inspections and are more stringent than the standards outlined within Inspire. If you think that this applies to you, send me an email. My guess is that this will not apply to most of you, this will not apply. And if part 1 does not apply, you can just skip it.
Hey,
So,
Cody,
yeah.
it's Claudia. Sorry to interrupt you, but do you guys have a list of who is in this or who's not? Or do we just need to reach out to our local county, city
You would need to
governments?
you need to reach out
Okay.
to your local county. The reason we're having y'all do this is because I mean, I'll be frank, like y'all know your communities better than we do. Um so yeah, this would be reaching out to your local county governments. Ooh,
Okay,
I will
and
be
for
right.
those of
Well, guys, sorry, I
so
will be right back. I just spilled coffee. Hang on.
okay.
Okay. Sorry about that, everyone. Claudia, you were saying something?
So do we need, I know you're gonna probably get, so we can list everybody on one form. We don't have to have like separate forms for each county, town, city, municipality that we work with.
Yeah, so that's what these lines are for. And again, you only fill out like if you don't work with any I only want the names of the counties and cities that do have ongoing property standards.
Yeah, got it.
So,
Mhm.
yeah, so if you don't have any county or city with ongoing property standards, then there is no need to fill out this part. Um, so you would just need a line. So, yeah, you would just need to put their names here and here in these lines. And then there's this box that you check. By checking this box, I acknowledge that I must provide the following documents to OHCS. And that is, again, so we would need a list of the property standards that supersede the requirements. You could get the list of property standards probably from your county or city governments. And then we would need to create a modified inspections checklist. This sounds extremely burdensome. I recognize that. So again, if this is something that applies to you, then I would like you to send me an email so we can schedule some time to go over it. I'm going to see what kind of support OHCS can provide. Um, yeah, in creating like these property standards and checklists and things like that. But again, like the state of Oregon doesn't have anything. And I think there's certain state building codes that I know preempt local jurisdictions. So, yeah, if this applies to you, reach out to me. If this does not apply to you, then you fill out part 2. Um, you just say your name. So complete part 2 of this document if any body of local government within your service area has not adopted property standards that require ongoing inspections. So and then you state your name, duly authorized to act on behalf of, and then the name of your community action agency. Hereby acknowledge and confirm that any local government within my service area not explicitly listed in part 1, so any body that's not listed above, has not adopted local property standards that supersede all or part of Inspire. So again, most of you, I think you're just going to fill out this one. Yeah. Any questions on this document?
How often is this filled out? Is it once a year, once a biennium?
Once a biennium. So we're gonna yeah. So right now it's going to be on a different timeline than the rest of the master grant agreement because we don't have to implement it until October 1st. So I wanted to give y'all more time to work on this. And then starting next biennium, we're going to incorporate this as one of the required documents of the master grant agreement. Okay. Any other questions about this or anything that we talked about? Anything extra in the chat?
I think the only thing really, Cody, was people asking like, who did they use for Inspire? And I know there was one in there. If there's anybody else that people have used that have had success with, if you could let us know, that would be awesome. Because I would love to transition to these as soon
Yeah,
as we can.
yeah, I can do that. I know, I think the affordable rental housing side of OHCS has implemented and done Inspire trainings, so I can get the name of who they did trainings with and send that to y'all. Yeah, Rebecca.
Gotta unmute. So, yeah, I mean, I know that that's a question on my list. You know, I've looked at all kinds of different trainings, and some come, you know, with the certification. Some pretty much are like through HUD. It's not really a certified training. It's just something that you take. So one of my questions is how, I mean, does it have to be a certification like HQS? Is it just a matter of taking the training and kind of knowing what we're doing? You know, like, so how far do we have to go with it? And then my second part of that question, is there still any additional funding for the training? Because I know like Nan McKay is pretty expensive and that kind of thing for the inspection. I know when it first came out, there was some additional.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I can see if we have extra home admin to give y'all for Inspire training. I'm happy to allocate that to everyone. I think that is a very reasonable thing, so I'll get y'all information on that. And then in terms of the certification, I have the regs pulled up right here. So let's see. New program. Okay. Must provide participating certification form. Okay, so I will I don't want to give you all the wrong information. I would lean toward needing a certification just to be on the safe side, but I can there's like HUD has a whole page dedicated to Inspire, so I will double check that. But then yeah, I can see if there's extra funding for trainings, and if you've already done Inspire trainings, let me know because we can see if there's a way to do reimbursement for people that have already gotten their inspections, like their Inspire inspections, trainings done. Yeah, I agree, Claudia. Yeah, and it's
Okay, can I ask one last question and then I'll like mute myself completely? No.
go for
So
it.
I know things are so up in the air right now with funding, and we're doing a lot of us are in budget seasons and things like that. Now with HUD changes, it seems like the HUD field office is in a tizzy too, and all the things. Do we anticipate any maybe non-renewal of funding for HTBA at this time, or is it kind of like we're progressing as normal until we know different?
So as far as I'm aware, we're progressing as normal until we know different. Um, I have not gotten any word that funding is going to be any different for this upcoming program year. Um, as we get more information, then we will share it with y'all. But at this time, there's nothing that would say that we're not going to get funding, and that goes for both home and ESG.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, of course, I know. Yeah. So cool. Okay. Anything else anyone wants to talk about? Any other points of clarification, questions, things like that? Okay. I will take that silence as a no. So yeah, I'll go ahead and send out a mass email to everyone with the PowerPoint, the various documents, and then I'll get information about admin funding for Inspire. And if that's it, yeah, of course, Autumn. Great, yeah. And if there's nothing else, then thank you all for coming. Oh, and I'll also provide the home TBA manual too, so that y'all can review the edits. The edits basically just incorporate the things that we went over already, but I'm sure some of y'all want to see the language. So we'll make sure I
The
provide
antenna
that
engine
too.
certification, the TIC, we should be doing, and we haven't been. So that's definitely. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
So sorry, Rick, I wasn't sure if you're asking a question, but yeah, so yeah, I'll go ahead and send you all the manual edits so that you can see them. We'll do a 30-day comment period, and if I get feedback, then we can address it then. If there's no feedback, then we'll move forward. Yeah, then we'll move forward. So, and
Awesome.
I'll give
Thanks,
y'all info.
Cuddy.
Yeah, and I'll give you all info on Inspire training as well. Thanks, y'all.